Hi, my name's Janelle and welcome back to Rosary Apparel. In this video, I'm going to be transforming this tablecloth into a blouse. You can obviously use any type of fabric for this DIY, but I found this beautiful tablecloth while out thrifting, and as soon as I saw it, I knew it was destined to be something really beautiful and special for my wardrobe. So let's get into it and let me show you how to make a button-up blouse. For this tutorial, I'm going to be pattern hacking my Rosa sewing pattern, which I'll have a link to in the description of this video. I'll also be using some free templates that I've shared in the description of these two videos, both of which I'll have a link to in the description below as well. I made these templates to work perfectly with the Rosa pattern, but the sleeve templates can also be used with my Willow pattern too. For this project, I'll be using the Sleeve 1 template. So to make this button-up blouse, take the bodice front of the Rosa pattern and lengthen it by about 10 centimeters or 4 inches and extend the center front by about 2.5 centimeters or an inch. Then take the bodice back and also lengthen that by 10 centimeters or 4 inches and bring in the center back by about 1 centimeter or half an inch. Then change the front and back facing pieces to match. Now that all the changes have been made to the template pieces, it's time to cut them out in your fabric or tablecloth. With the fabric folded in half, place the template pieces onto it. For the blouse, the bodice back is going to be placed on the fold of the fabric instead of the bodice front. And instead of drawing out new template pieces, I've decided to place my pieces the correct amount away from the decorative edge of the tablecloth, as I want to include this decorative edge as a feature of the blouse. Before I start cutting the pieces out, I use my water erasable pen. You could also use some tailor's chalk instead, and a ruler to mark a straight line from the underarm point of both the bodice front and back, as this will make the blouse a little less fitted. If you want a fitted blouse though, you could simply keep the pattern pieces as they are. Now it's time to cut the pieces out, remembering to also place the back facing onto the fold instead of the front facing. And you should now have the following pieces. By folding the tablecloth in half and cutting the pieces out on the fold, I found it was pretty easy to get the floral details of the tablecloth symmetrical on all of the pieces. Start by taking the two collar pieces and with right sides together, stitch them together along the outside edge like this. Then trim away the corners and clip the curves, being careful not to accidentally snip the stitching. Then turn the collar right side out and use something like a knitting needle to poke out the corners and the seam of the collar. Then give the collar a press with your iron. And your collar should be looking a little something like this. Next, with right sides together, place the facing fronts onto the facing back and stitch them together along the shoulder seams like this. After sewing each seam, I personally like to overlock my raw edges to prevent them from fraying, and you can use a zigzag stitch of your sewing machine instead if you don't have an overlocker. I then also overlock the outside edge of the now sewn together facings, and then press this curved edge in by about 1 centimeter or half an inch, and then stitch it in place. Next, take the bodice front templates and mark out the bust darts onto the wrong side of the bodice fronts with a water erasable pen or some tailor's chalk. Fold the darts and then stitch them in place. Once stitched, press the darts towards the bottom of the blouse. Then, with right sides together, place the bodice fronts onto the bodice back and stitch them together along the shoulder seams. And your blouse should be looking a little something like this. Place the collar onto the blouse, matching the curved neck edge, and then place the facing on top of the collar, also matching the curved neck edge, and stitch in place, securing all 3 layers into position as you sew. Once stitched, clip the curved edge, again being careful not to accidentally snip the stitching, and then fold and press the facing onto the inside of the blouse. And you should now have a nicely enclosed collared neck edge like this. Let's take a moment to talk about the sponsor of this video. If you've been watching my videos for a while, then I'm sure you know all about Skillshare, but just in case you don't, Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creative type people. On Skillshare, you can find classes on a range of different topics such as photography, fashion, sewing, productivity, illustration, the list goes on and on. What I really love about Skillshare is that it's curated to make it super easy for you to learn new and practical skills, meaning there are no ads to interrupt your learning, and there are new classes being added to the platform all the time, so there's always something new to go and explore. A new class that I'm really excited to try is one called Finding Fulfillment by one of my all-time favourites, Emma Gadden. I've been listening to Emma's podcast for ages, and it's really nice to be able to get even more insight into some really niche creative career topics such as this. And in this class, Emma shares how she and others have used pivots throughout their careers to bring not only success but happiness and personal fulfillment to what they do day to day. So if you'd like to explore Skillshare for yourself, then the first 1,000 people who click the link in my description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare Premium. Thanks Skillshare for sponsoring this video. So as I said, I want the decorative edge of the tablecloth to be a feature of the blouse, but if you're using ordinary fabric, you would now hem the centre front edges by folding in about 1 centimetre or half an inch twice. But if you're using a tablecloth like me, feel free to leave the centre front edge as it is. Now, with right sides together, place the blouse fronts onto the back and stitch them together along the side seams. Now it's time to make the sleeves. For these sleeves, I'm actually going to be following the exact same steps that I shared in the video that I made these templates for. So definitely check that video out if you want to learn how to make these adorable shirred puff sleeves. But for now, here is a sped up version of the process. Once these sleeves are made, I use the steam of my iron to shrink the shirring elastic a little bit more, and then I give the shirring a good press. Then I gently pull on the sleeves gathering stitches, and then with right sides together, I pin the sleeves to the armholes of the blouse, and then stitch them in place. And the blouse is nearly complete. Now to attach some buttons and make the buttonholes. You can use the buttonhole foot of your sewing machine to make yours, but alternatively, place the button you'll be using onto the buttonhole edge of the blouse, and using a water erasable pen or some tailor's chalk, mark approximately 2mm or 1/8 of an inch on either side of the button. Then join these markings up to create a buttonhole shape. Then repeat this, making sure there's approximately a 10cm or 4-inch space between each buttonhole. For my blouse, I ended up having 4 buttonholes. Next, set your sewing machine to a zigzag stitch and change your stitch length to 0.4 and your stitch width to 2.5. Stitch along the two lengths of your buttonhole marking like this. Then change your stitch length to 0.2 and your stitch width to 5.5 and sew a few stitches along the top and bottom of your buttonhole to finish it. Tie the back threads together into a double knot and then snip away the loose threads. Then using a seam ripper, open your buttonhole by cutting the fabric inside, being careful not to cut any of your stitching. Next, overlap the centre front edges with the buttonhole edge on top, and then use your marker to mark where the buttons should be placed. Then stitch your buttons onto your blouse. Then lastly, hand stitch the facing onto the inside of the blouse at the shoulder seams. And your lovely button-up blouse is complete. So, how does it look? I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you do have a go at making a blouse like this one for yourself, then I would love to see it. So be sure to tag me at Rosary Apparel when you share your photos on Instagram, and be sure to subscribe to this channel for more sewing tutorials like this one. Have a lovely day and thanks for watching!